Wisdom, being infinite, cannot be restricted. You see, the word infinite means without restriction, without bound. So wisdom, being infinite, cannot be restricted in any way. Wisdom, the knowing of mind, without restriction, illimitably knows what infinite mind is. Mind knows what mind is. That's one. And mind knows what knowing is. Two. And this is the proverbial two that are one. Wisdom knows what mind is. And by the mere fact that it is infinite and cannot be held within any boundary, wisdom knows what mind is not and could never be. The pseudo-hypothetical fictitious dream world of opposites. Now again, in simple terms, mind knows what mind is, that's one, and what knowing is, that's two. But, and herein arises the second dualism, the mist that covered the whole face of the ground, the Moses dream. Mind knows also, illimitably knowing. Mind knows what mind is not. Three. And mind knows what knowing is not. Now, these is-nots serve a distinctly good purpose. They delineate what is. They delineate what is, just as darkness delineates light. Just as unhappiness delineates joy. Just as anguish outlines tranquility. As poverty makes wealth clearly understood. But it is our joy to discover that the is-nots are powerless, just as darkness is powerless before light. And as a consequence of this discovery, we are not upset nor fooled by the apparent dualism. Rather, we discern the dualism to be the natural necessary means by which wisdom is infinitely wise, beyond the boundaries of a limiting knowledge of naught but what is. Isn't it interesting that mortal mind is powerful enough to concoct a fairy tale, a fiction, a dream, and sometimes a beautiful dream? Yet, as the absolutist, we would refuse to grant this same power to omnipotence, unbound power itself. Well, you see now what we've done. Finally, we have arrived at the reasons for the appearance of mortality. What are those reasons? Mortality is the delineation of immortality. That which wisdom knows immortality is not and could never be. A contrary delineation, sometimes direct and sometimes obverse, of illimitable isness, knowing itself. Now listen. The comprehension of this simple fact, and it's a fact of being, allows us for the first time to know why the approach to truth is also an approach to all that truth is not. For the first time, we are able to perceive why each discovery of a veritable fact of being is the simultaneous discovery of a knowledge of all that fact, that particular fact, is not. Why the unbound knowledge of what tranquility is necessitates a knowledge of the fictitious hypothetical dream world of all that anguish and agony appear to be. That is what tranquility is not and could never be. Oh, but much more. For the first time we are able to look at the is-nots and not be frightened by them, but understand them and the purpose they serve, hence to find our healing. You see, Jesus said, "Know what is before thy face, then that which is hidden from thee will be revealed." Know what is before thy face, not heal it, cure it, correct it, but to know it, to understand it. And so for the first time, you see, we look at the is-nots, not frightened by them, but understanding them and the purpose they serve, Hence, to be frightened by the night no longer. Hence, to step over the root, so long believed to be a snake, to be destroyed, or gotten rid of, or corrected, or healed. Finally, our battle with two-ness ends, and we find that transcendent peace, the light of life, which resides above all mortal strife, which resides above the world with its dualistic comings and goings. For the first time it becomes exceedingly clear how our search for the truth has pulled the rug out from under the concept of a searcher, and to that searcher's awful wonderment, to that searcher's awful consternation. Oh, I can remember how I finally saw why this study did create an apparent chemicalization. We are enabled to look upon the self-being identity with great joy, with great joy. We see the worldly belief of age, for instance, as naught but the delineation of eternal youth. We discern that every appearance of death was naught but life's infinite, unbound knowledge of all that life is and forever must be. And now, for the first time, we have never seen even the appearance of death at all, and we know it, but we've seen merely life's self-delineation beyond intellectuality's attempt, the ego's attempt, the limiter's attempt to limit all knowing to isness alone. You see, intellectuality is the human delineation of omniscience. Intellectuality would stop at the knowledge of isness. It would stop right there, crying out that only what is can be known. What is not cannot be known. Failing to recognize the is-nots are but the apparent means by which an unbound, illimitable, transcendent wisdom appears to itself to be infinitely wise. Somewhat like the tree's view of its shadow self. You see, the tree stands tall and strong. Only its shadow is born each morning. Only its shadow moves from its beginning in the west towards its swollen, elongated evening death in the east. Only the shadow longs for a return to the morning of its youth, or trembles in fear of possible passing clouds of misfortune that may snuff it out prematurely or something. Only the shadow mourns the twilight. Only the shadow sighs at the growing darkness of the evening. Through it all, the tree remains untouched. The tree remains untroubled. The tree views its shadow as but one of the means. Yes, the same way that notes in symphony are one symphony, and numerals and arithmetic are one arithmetic. So, tree and shadow are one tree, but the power and the authority lie in the tree, not the shadow, in the principle, not in the numbers, in the symphony, not in the notes. We see that these two are a single one. Well, tangibility, the tangible scene of trees and bees and people and things, and the ineffable, that which is being, tangibility, are one ineffable that. The power and the authority lie in the ineffable, in the that, and not in the things. Another way that might be put is that awareness, consciousness, or conscious awareness, if you want to put it that way, and the tree that it sees are one conscious awareness. But the power and the authority lie with awareness and not with the tree. It's only to the body sense of self, to the limited sense of identity that says my body is looking at a tree. It's only to that point of view that the tree has power and authority. But from the body point of view, everything is potent. The whole world is a maze that one has to walk through, wend his way through, and hopefully make it. If he gets enough education, if he gets the right breaks. Oh, but from the standpoint of awareness, without the possessor, me, who says my awareness, from the standpoint of awareness, all things are awareness. Awareness and the seen are one awareness. And the power and the authority lie with awareness. You know, over the years I've learned so very much from nature, from my love of the outdoors and having been in it as a soldier. And well, I would like to clear up a point or two. There is the great grand fantasy rampant among all the peoples of the world, that in order to discover the truth of being, which is to say, in order to discover the truth that identity is, that this life is, that it's necessary to be out in the quiet, in the still, in the woodland, to do a lot of fence post leaning and rock sitting and leaf watching. You know, watching leaves is quite an art. You can see and learn so much from leaves. Leaves, that remarkable part of a photosynthetic process that converts light photons into tangible matter. And by matter, we don't mean something that has life or intelligence or substance in it. We mean an image within awareness. And the authority lies, of course, with awareness, not with the leaf. But in any event, that leaf, what it can teach, it's so soft and green in the spring. Then it becomes vigorous and darker green as the heat of the summer comes on, as the summer showers fall. Then as the summer gets very dry and hot, the leaf curls and grown brittle and hard, and the leaves look like they're begging or longing for the earth. They want to come home. And then in the fall, after the first frost, and sometimes before, you can just be sitting back and leaning against a fence post and watch one of those leaves turn loose and fall. And when you're an old experienced leaf watcher like me, there are leaves that, in the process of falling, some of them sail like ships without a rudder, flipping one way then another, as though they were surveying the ground below and trying to decide just exactly the place to put themselves down. And there are other leaves, like, let's say, the leaves of the angel elm. And when those leaves cut loose, they spin. And then others spin in a different way. They spin around the length of the axis. And their path, they come down like a propeller. And then there are those leaves that just fall at random. And I might mention that, you know, to catch a falling leaf is considered a good omen in the East. And if you were a Taoist, if you could catch a yellow leaf falling, oh, this would be the height of good luck. And if you could catch 3, that's really something. And if you could catch 12, oh boy. I remember coming over a hill once in China, and I looked down below, and I saw a lone tree on the horizon, and what appeared to be a group of children beneath it, running and frolicking and playing, and it was the only tree around. And as I got closer, I could see that the wind was blowing and the leaves were falling, and here was this group of what I thought were children, and what in fact turned out to be children. a group of Taoist monks as they ran to and fro underneath the tree, laughing and yelling and having more fun catching the leaves. Well, there's a great deal to be said about the art of watching leaves falling. Oh, I'll write something about that one day. But what I guess I wanted to say was there is no need, no absolute necessity for stillness in order to know the truth. One doesn't have to be in a physical place of solitude and beauty and quietness and so forth in order to discern the truth. I know this is true, and I know. As a soldier, I didn't love nature at all. And in the heat and the hubbub and the furor of battle, with death, or what I called death then, appearing all about me, I was able in the midst of that turmoil and upheaval to discern truth. And I haven't always loved nature either. Oh, no way. Once upon a time, a mountain was not a thing of beauty. Not to me. A mountain was something one had to climb up to the top of, either to climb over to get to the foe or to set up a defense line. And a river certainly wasn't a thing of beauty. Oh no, a river wasn't something to sit along the banks and enjoy, but rather it was a place to establish a final protective line, or it was a barrier that had to be crossed, usually at night, usually against gunfire. It was an obstacle. And the earth, even the earth itself, was an enemy to me. It seemed I could see no beauty in any meadow anywhere, because the earth was a place to dig a hole in to stay alive, or dig a hole in to put someone's body whom you loved, or to put someone who had fallen in front of your own gun sight. And trees, the way I love trees now, and yet there was a time when a tree to me was something to stay away from. There isn't an infantryman anywhere who doesn't understand the peculiar horror of being under a tree or seeing others under one. When an artillery shell exploded in the tree or a mortar shell exploded in the tree, in what's called a tree burst. So trees were things to avoid, to stay away from. No, there was a time when I saw no beauty whatever in nature, and yet with the discovery, with self-discovery, with the grand discovery, comes a love for all things and an enjoyment of all things, and a recognition of why it had seemed the way it did before. Oh, I walk the back trails. Sure I do. I find the lonely places, and I take my solitude to the sunshine and the rain and the hilltop high. It's true. It's very difficult to worry about anything with the smell of the woodland in one's nostrils and the feel of the earth beneath one's feet and the sound of birds a wing for company. Who can fret while the sun shines hot on one's face and when the perspiration rolls? I've often wondered, what about anguish makes it fly away when I'm walking down cotton rows looking for arrowheads? Well, now, many tell me that they haven't got time ever to get away. And that's the very reason I'm saying what I'm saying. One doesn't have to get away. People say, well, they're too pressed. They say they're just too pressed to be able to turn loose and get away, even for a walk in a quiet place. Or they say there is no place to walk where they are, or there's no quietness in the midst of their town. Well, it's a lot of spoof and foos. I know this, that every journey one makes isn't a physical journey. In fact, most of them aren't. Dear folks, how long does a flight of fancy take? Tell me, how close is a dream? I walk a back trail once, then I walk it again in the mind's eye 1,000 times. I climbed a hilltop just the other day and sat under a shelter in a cooling rain. Well, between these words right here, telling of it, I was there again, smelling the fresh air again, feeling it in my hair again, and all in the twinkling of an eye, all in the refreshing mist of memory. And there is no quietness in the midst of turmoil, people say. Well, that's nonsense. The secret of silence doesn't lie in some languid land of mystery, away from the cacophony of humanity's hustle. Silence lies in the stillness of the heart. It lies in a gentle peace of mind. And that stillness, that peace of mind, it is our heritage. It has been our heritage from the beginning. It lies in a living simplicity. And it lies in an unencumbered identity. It lies in the view of a swooping bird and fern nestled among the rocks. And it lies in the joy of giving to others and then receiving from others. The peace of quietness and the still quietness of peace are right here, right now, closer than breathing, closer than fingers and toes, and we don't have to get up and break our connections with society in order to find it. We don't have to quit a job. We don't have to break up a marriage. We don't have to withdraw from any organization. We don't have to come out and be separate from anything. We have only to understand what is before our eyes, understand it for what it is, and lo, the organization, the hassle, the human hubbub are seen for what they are, in a new light and in a new joy. So, heavy heart, listen. There is a meadow of soft grass very close at hand. A bubbling brook is close by, cool water, singing a song of relief and release from the anguish of heaviness. You just listen to me. There's a mellow meadow, beautiful, rolling, gentle, fragrant. And in the center of it, neath a tree, is a place to rest and to watch leaves fall. Now the hillside may seem steep, and it may seem there's no one to take you there, but you will find it. You will find it. Be still, be very still, and it'll find you. It'll call you, and more, when you find it, it'll smile. It's inevitable. It's the meadow of identity. And it's beautiful and fresh and clean. It's guiltless. It's perfect. It's eternal. And flowers grow there. By gosh, flowers grow there. Butterflies flutter there and chipmunks scamper. And there's peace there. And it's right where you are. Are not difficult. It isn't difficult. It isn't complicated. This whole study of truth is not an intellectual matter at all. You see, being is already being. Being is all already. Okay, from whence then does the complication arise? Where in the allness of all can come forth this idea, I don't understand. I can't get the hang of it. I haven't made my demonstration yet. I'm not smart enough. I seem to be very near a breakthrough. Oh, how many times I've heard that. But there is just some little bit more to be understood. Well, listen to me now. Self-discovery is going on right now. Actually, self-comprehension, self-discovery is all that's going on. Now, how could this be so? Well, if we start at the beginning with God, if we start at the top with allness, the very awareness right now, listening to these words, is God awareness and not a personally possessed awareness. Which brings to mind all of the movies about possession and the occult that we are seeing at the moment. Well, the only possession possible, in fact, is the belief that a personality possesses this very God awareness of being. And how quickly this exorcises that little devilish nobody. So, back to what we were talking about. Right now, self-observation, self-discovery, self-comprehension, self-understanding is all that's going on. Right here, right now, plus a big heavy rain. It is wetting everything real good outside. And I tell you, it's God's self-awareness listening to these words, and not a person, not a personality. So it isn't a difficult thing, this thing of self-discovery. It isn't difficult. It's going on all the time. It's happening whether there is an intellectual awareness of it or not. It's a fact whether one is even interested or not. The world calls it learning. But top down, starting with God, the word is not learning, it's self-comprehension. And it's effortless. Oh, now the human sense of self, bottom-upping, starting with the problem, starting with the body and trying to solve it, trying to heal it, to that it is a severe intellectual task, requiring the line upon line building up of an edifice, a learning edifice, to support every conclusion until something comes along to rip the understructure apart. And what do? We have to start all over with another intellectual target, another attack, another attempt to climb up to the summit of wisdom. But top down, awareness comprehends the effortlessness of the so-called learning process. It's happening at every minute, no matter what one thinks he's doing. It's happening whether we are open and study metaphysical books or not. It's happening whether we're meditating or playing a game of tennis, whether we're sitting quietly in the garden or poring over our ledgers. Self-comprehension, so acknowledged, learning, renamed and understood as self-comprehension going on, and so acknowledged, allows an immediate relief from all of the old struggles, the old learning struggles, the old struggles of stupidity, the old struggles of not having enough intelligence. It allows an immediate relief from all of that and from the old struggles to get up to perfection. Self-comprehension is already at perfection, viewing perfection, living quite perfectly no matter what label has been put on it. Relax just a little now and let yourself just be the comprehension of this gentle, honest, simple, childlike fact of being. Because it's going on right now. It's happening. Well, I've been asked what I meant by top-down. Top-down thinking as opposed to bottom-up thinking. I've explained it so many times, but let me try it this way. Top-down means starting the mental, intellectual process from the intellectual premise that God is all in all. You see, any thinking that is done in words, any talking that's done in words, is an intellectual process. All right, and we can't get rid of the intellectual process. The intellect is as much a part of awareness as is the heart. So when I have reference to top-down, I mean that we start our mental thinking processes, that the intellectual processes of weighing and measuring things, but from the premise that God is all in all. That God is all. This is the premise from which it begins, and not the pantheistic position which says all things are God. This isn't to be confused with pantheism. Rather, it's the panentheistic position. The panentheistic position which acknowledges that isness, or God, is being all that is. I can tell you this, that top-down gets to be a very natural thing. It doesn't require reminders every minute that I must begin with God, or any such thing as that. One begins to survey the scene. One just looks about, and whatever should present itself for question or examination is surveyed very naturally as God awareness making the observation from the standpoint of perfection. One might say, well, now just how does this particular picture fit perfection seen? We look out across the way, and there alongside the road is the body of a little dog that's been struck, perhaps. Just how does this fit perfection seen? You see, looking at the same sight from the old bottom-up standpoint, one hears himself saying, oh, Lordy, Lordy, what are my children going to think when they see that their little puppy is gone? What terrible effect is that going to have on my experience? And who is this me who is saying my on this last situation? It is that old pseudo-identity who claims to be the owner, the possessor of life. Invariably, that Pecksniffian poltroon, how about that, to whom we yield awareness to serve. So long as conscious awareness remains the tool of a master like that, of that lifeless master, that spoof and foos figment of the imagination, just so long does awareness continue to see more and more sights that must ultimately expose the nothingness of the possessor. Let me say that again. the possessor's conscious experience becomes ever more and more unbearable until it's found out and understood, until the possessor is found out and understood for the purpose that such a spurious one serves in the first place. Now, is that clear? I see all kinds of smiles, so let's pause and consider that a little bit and listen to the rain. The theme that did very well in California this last trip, the theme had to do with returning to the beginning. I'm sure all of you here have heard that statement many times. I finally found the vehicle to carry the message in the simple little illustration of awakening each day as awareness. And until one assumed the awakened conscious awareness belonged to himself or to someone else, until that time, awareness was just going on about the business of being aware. It wasn't until one felt within himself and thought within himself, this is my awareness, my life, my thought for the morning, my plans for the day, my this and that and so forth, that the thing that we've grown to call mortal mind was born. You see, every thought that stems from the predicate, this is my mind, listening to these words. This is me, sitting here, who is trying to learn something, is the thinking of what has been called the carnal mind. And it is the product of an assumed ego, an assumed identity on the scene. But, when this is recognized, we see at the same time, we come to comprehend that the belief in that pseudo-ego, the misidentification, the belief in it is quite natural, and it's perfectly all right for a time and good. It should be that way. Otherwise, one would never understand beyond intellectualism exactly what egolessness or the divine identity is. I had a phone call not so long ago from one who wanted to know if there was a rite of exorcism. A rite, R-I-T-E, of exorcism. And, well, there is no rite, R-I-G-H-T, there's no rite for such an event since there is no real possession. There isn't any such thing as a real possession. There is the belief of possession, however. And that belief, when it's boiled down to its most basic presentation, is the belief that this life, right here, right now, belongs to a me. The me is the possessor. Life is the supposed possessed. But the me is hypothetical. The me is the false identification that makes the real identification known and understood. The possessed, if it were possible, the possessed would be life, awareness, the consciousness of these very words. And this cannot be put into another, nor can another be put into it, because there is no other. There is only the one. There is God only, God mind, and not another mind to take charge of it or possess it. We don't deny there are appearances that indicate people are sometimes filled with an alien spirit that has them appearing to act in ways that are strange and foreign, unnatural, and so forth. Anger, it seems, can take one over, cause actions that it wouldn't be thought of otherwise. Jealousy certainly causes people to act as if they were possessed either of something or by someone. But what are all these appearings that we're talking about. But images included within awareness, and every image within awareness is a note of the symphony, leading directly or indirectly to the symphony itself. Possession, therefore, is the delineation of identity, which is all in all, existing alone. Allness has nothing outside itself by means of which it can. Well, how does this fit into the statement about supply? That is, how does the top-down, beginning with God, concept of this awareness is the functioning of the divine mind, and isn't the possession, you see, of Bill or Rachel or Jeffrey Snagbottom or somebody? Well, how does this concept serve to say anything about the matter of supply? Well, listen now. Listen gently. Top down, God doesn't need anything that God isn't being. Also, God is all that is and needs that all that is in the same way the finished symphony needs each chord that constitutes its own being. So, viewed top down, nothing can be given, nothing taken away. Top down awareness. This very awareness, right here, right now, listening to these words, is the functioning of God-mind. God-mind and its functioning are one God-mind. Now, no two-ness here. Mind and its functioning are one mind. Even if separation were possible, each mind and its functioning would be seen to be the supplied fulfillment of the other. That is, you see, mind isn't mind if it isn't aware, and awareness is nothing without mind. Supply now, as seen from this top-down position, is natural and normal. It is going on every moment. It's already happening, and it's incapable of limitation, it's incapable of lack, and it is not capable of any kind of manipulation. All right, now, continuing top-down, remember Lao Tzu says to start at the beginning, and first there's one, then there's two, then there's three, and the wise man knows when to stop. All right, we'll know when to stop. We haven't stopped yet. All of a sudden the body appears when one looks into a mirror. We began at the top, and we started with consciousness, and then awareness, and now of what awareness is aware of, and we look in the mirror, and lo and behold, there's a body. Well, the mirror and the body appearing therein, or thereout, or anywhere, is ever noted within awareness, not outside it. Therefore, awareness, consciousness, is the substance of body form. And as such, that form lives and moves and has its being without fear of want, without lack, without something depriving it of whatever is necessary for form to be form. We note that it isn't until the preposition is introduced that awareness belongs to a body form. Seen in the lake's reflection or in the mirror, that there is a consciousness that the body form is good or bad. I'll say that again. It isn't until we introduce the possibility that the awareness that sees the body form in the mirror or in the lake belongs to a me, that there is any kind of a me decision that would say, oh, I don't like the way that body looks. A me decision that says that is a form that I don't like. And that me is a pseudo-possessor of awareness. And it's that one that does all the liking and disliking, the wanting, the needing, desiring, lusting. Lusting after the goodness, chewing the bad. Judgment doesn't enter the scene until the possessor is acknowledged as real, until one takes the liar to be identity. In one of the Han stories, at this point, the old master is asked by one of his students. He says, oh, but dear Han, the one and only identity is being everything, as you've taught us. So therefore, that one must also be the sum and substance of the liar also. Isn't that so? And Han answers, yes, you have it straight. But wisdom is not fooled by the fantasy, is it? And then the student puzzles for a moment and says, but is wisdom not being fooled when I stand before the mirror and play the part of a fool? And Han answers, whether you play the fool or not. Are you fooled by your own shadow? And whether you play the fool or not, can your shadow harm you? Now, awareness, it is the same awareness. If we look in the mirror and say, aha, this is my awareness of being, I am the owner, the custodian of this awareness. Well, now, it is the same awareness whether we do that last or not. But we don't have to become and play the part of the ego possessor of awareness. We can just be awareness. Now, we go on through the day just like we've always done. It doesn't change anything in particular. But oh, how different it is to see that since all things appear within awareness, and awareness is the substance of all things, that identity is just as big as the scene is, and how much different it is to go through the day with the entire scene, one's identity, and not just that little bag of bones called Bill or Jan or something else. Now, granted, that little bag of bones will still be there. It still appears to walk around and be a part of the scene, but for good reason. We can see that awareness has, in essence, been identity from the word go, and that to limit identity to the size of a bag of bones and give it a time when it was born and worry about a time when the bag of bones is going to die is to ignore the infinity that awareness is being. Now, the comprehension of a subtle viewpoint like this appears to require much repetition. The same ideas presented from many angles, softly or vigorously or shockingly or directly, as we're doing it right here, sometimes obtusely and sometimes even obversely. Without question, subtle viewpoints are perceived often from out of our frustration and from out of the humility of helplessness. Whatever leads us to the heartfelt comprehension of light also leads us to the repugnant emptiness of this ego shell, this concept of this is my life, my awareness, that we've all, for good reason, been encrusted by, as appearances go, a shell to be seen for what it is and forsaken. It is the very contradistinguishing nature of human living that allows for the delineation of divine being in exactly the same way that darkness is the means by which light is delineated. Were we all right here, right now, chickens in an incubator, having been bathed forever in the light of an incubator, would we know what light is and know it, infinitely know it, beyond all intellectualism, until somebody pulled the plug and for a moment is not light, or light's contradistinction called darkness became apparent? At that moment, light and what light is would be known by even those who didn't even care about it, didn't even want to know about it, wouldn't acknowledge the existence of it. Suddenly wisdom reigned upon the just and the unjust in that moment of darkness. And so it is that our humanhood is the means by which the divinity that is real is made plain. And those two are a single one. A single one. The tree and its shadow are one tree, but it's tree that has power and authority and love. This will conclude our session for this morning, and I thank you all very much for your attention.